Stop everything you're doing, because what you're about to hear could break your heart. Last night, the world saw a private tragedy unfold, a secret illness that shook even the strongest among us. You think you know the heroes of our time, but what if the person who's inspired millions has been silently fighting for his life and no one knew? A leaked hospital report revealed a truth no one was ready for, and one woman's screams are now echoing across the world. What happened to Bishop T.D. Jakes is beyond anything you can imagine. Imagine watching the strongest man you know struggle to survive and realizing you weren't the only one holding your breath. Last night, the world held its heart for Bishop Jakes. The moment she opened the report, the world changed. Her scream wasn't just pain, it became the cry of millions. What happened next will leave you speechless. Stop for a moment, because what you're about to read isn't just news, it's heartbreak. Last night, Serita Jakes' world fell apart in the most devastating way. A leaked hospital report reached her hands, and as she scanned the words, her fingers shook, her chest tightened, and a scream tore from her soul. That scream wasn't just sound, it was the breaking of a soul under the weight of tragedy. It was fear, grief, and love all colliding at once, echoing through the room and spilling into the hearts of everyone who heard it. In Serita's cry lived 1,000 unspoken prayers, 1,000 shattered dreams, and the unbearable realization that life was about to change forever. The leaked hospital report revealed a truth no one had dared to imagine. Bishop T.D. Jakes, the man whose words had lifted millions out of despair, whose sermons had given strength to the weary, had been living with a deadly heart condition. The revelation struck like lightning. How could the man who seemed to carry the weight of the world in his voice be carrying such a silent, personal war inside his own body? Every sermon, every prayer, every encouraging word he had shared over the years now took on a new meaning. He had been speaking life into others while his own body was quietly breaking down. Every moment on the pulpit, every broadcast, every prayer whispered over countless believers had been offered in the shadow of his own suffering. And yet, he had never let it show. Serita stood frozen, her heart splitting in two. She realized in that instant that the man who had carried so many had been carrying unbearable pain alone. Tears blurred her vision, her knees trembled, and her chest felt as though it would collapse under the pressure of grief. Her mind raced through years of memories, his laughter, his strength, the way he held her hand when no one was watching, and now those same hands lay weak and fragile, trembling against the fight of his life. Her sobs filled the sterile hospital air. It wasn't just the grief of a wife fearing for her husband. It was the grief of a woman realizing that decades of sacrifice, secrecy, and silent endurance had been hiding behind his public smile. Outside the hospital walls, the world was waking up to the news. Social media platforms exploded with shock and heartbreak. Hashtags like #PrayForBishopJakes and #StandWithSerita began to trend globally. Videos of her cries, raw and devastating, spread across timelines, stirring millions of strangers to tears. Candlelight vigils sprang up in cities around the world. Crowds gathered in streets, in churches, in homes, united not by geography, but by grief. Inside, the battle continued. Nurses hurried in and out. Doctors exchanged urgent whispers. Machines beeped rhythmically, each sound both a lifeline and a haunting reminder of how fragile everything was. Serita never left his side. She clutched his hand as though she could will life into him with her grip alone. She whispered his favorite scriptures, the ones he had preached so often to others. She begged for another heartbeat, another smile, another tomorrow. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every flicker on the monitor was a tidal wave of emotion. Hope rose and fell with each adjustment, each number displayed on the screen. And all the while, Serita's devotion never wavered. She was a storm of love and anguish, her voice breaking into whispers and screams that filled the ICU with raw humanity. The leaked report revealed even more. Not only had Bishop Jakes hidden his illness, but he had done so deliberately to protect those he loved. He had endured the pain in silence so his family wouldn't worry, so his congregation could lean on his strength, so his followers could keep believing. He bore their burdens while burying his own. The weight of that revelation was too much for Serita. She collapsed into the chair beside his bed, her sobs tearing through the quiet hum of machines. "You've carried us all," she whispered. "But who carried you?" Her voice cracked, trembling under the force of grief, but she refused to let go of his hand. And outside, the world responded. In Lagos, groups of young believers knelt in prayer circles, clutching each other as they cried out for a miracle. In London, congregations filled sanctuaries with song and intercession. In New York, families gathered in living rooms, holding hands, their tears rolling freely as they prayed for a man they had never met but who had changed their lives. This was no longer a private family crisis. It had become a global outpouring of emotion. Bishop Jakes' fight for life was now the fight of millions. His wife's grief had become the world's grief, her hope the world's hope. Her screams had turned into a universal cry for mercy, echoing across continents, uniting people of every age, culture, and language. As dawn crept closer, the tension in the ICU thickened. Doctors worked tirelessly, nurses moved quickly, and the world outside continued to hold its breath. Then, a flicker of movement. A twitch of his fingers. The faintest flutter of eyelids. Serita gasped, clutching his hand tighter, tears streaming uncontrollably. Relief washed over her in a wave so overwhelming it nearly knocked her breath away. She screamed again, but this time her voice carried both terror and hope. "Hold on," she cried. "Please, just hold on." And as she spoke, millions around the world echoed her words. Online, posts flooded in prayers, messages of love, declarations of faith. Each one was a lifeline thrown into the darkness, a collective force of human devotion refusing to let go. The leaked report had done more than reveal an illness. It had exposed the depth of sacrifice, the fragility of even the strongest souls, and the power of collective love. It had transformed private heartbreak into a shared human story. Serita's cries were no longer just hers. They were the cries of a world unwilling to give up. Her hope had become a beacon, shining through the darkest night, reminding everyone that love, raw, desperate, unshakable love, is the strongest force we have. And so, with every heartbeat, the world waited. With every tear, they prayed. With every whisper, they held on. Because this was no longer just Bishop Jakes' fight. It was the fight of everyone who had ever been touched by his words, his prayers, his faith. A fight where every second mattered, every heartbeat was a miracle, and every prayer was a chance to pull him back from the edge. The revelation crushed her. He had hidden his illness, not out of pride, but to protect his family and his congregation. Decades of sacrifice, countless sleepless nights, and a lifetime of silent struggle came crashing down on her all at once. Her sobs filled the room as the reality sank in. Every time he stood before the world, it could have been his last. News spread quickly. Outside the hospital, supporters lit candles. Online, the world erupted in prayer. Hashtags like #PrayForBishopJakes and #SaveTheLegend trended within minutes. Videos of Serita's cries spread like wildfire, her face etched with pain becoming a symbol of love and loss. Millions felt her heartbreak as if it were their own. Inside the hospital, every moment felt fragile. Doctors and nurses worked urgently, their voices low but tense. Machines beeped, monitors flickered, and each sound made Serita's heart drop. She gripped his hand, whispering through tears, "Stay with me. Please don't leave us." The report revealed even more than anyone had imagined. Hidden among the clinical details of his illness were personal notes, pages and pages in Bishop T.D. Jakes' own handwriting, confessions of pain, exhaustion, and the quiet battles he had fought alone. The words were raw and intimate, a window into the private struggle that had been hidden from the world. "If I fall, who will lead?" he had written. The question carried a weight that Serita could hardly bear. It wasn't just a question about leadership or responsibility, it was a question about life itself, about a man who had devoted decades to lifting others while silently carrying his own unbearable burden. Each word she read felt like a dagger, slicing deeper into her already shattered heart. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the papers to her chest. She could feel the weight of every sermon, every prayer, every comforting word he had given over the years. Each act of guidance, each moment of strength, had been offered while he himself was running on the edge of exhaustion, fighting a heart that refused to obey. And yet, he had never let the world see his weakness. He had sacrificed his health for others, hiding his suffering behind a calm voice, a reassuring smile, and the familiar cadence of hope. Serita's sobs echoed through the hospital room, filling the sterile air with grief, love, and desperation. She pressed her forehead to his hand, whispered broken prayers, and asked aloud the questions she couldn't answer. "Why didn't you tell me? How could I not know? How could you bear this alone?" Her voice cracked as the full weight of the revelation bore down on her. For years, she had stood beside a man who seemed invincible to the world, only to realize that behind every strong word, every commanding sermon, he had been quietly on the brink of losing everything. And as her grief poured into the room, the world outside began to catch the echoes of her pain. The news of Bishop Jakes' condition, coupled with the leak of his private notes, spread like wildfire. Social media became a river of emotion. Screens across the globe filled with live updates from hospitals, candles flickering in the dark, and faces contorted with tears. Families huddled in prayer in living rooms, strangers held one another tight on streets and in parks, and thousands gathered in churches and community centers, each voice adding to a growing chorus of hope and supplication. The sight of Serita's anguish, her raw vulnerability, had ignited something far greater than sorrow. It became a call to action, a shared heartbeat connecting millions across continents. People who had never met her or her husband felt their hearts ache with her, as if the collective weight of their prayers could somehow push the boundaries of life and death. Every whispered hope, every tear shed, every candle lit became part of a global vigil, a testament to the power of human empathy and devotion. Inside the ICU, Serita never left his side. Her hands, trembling but steadfast, held his as though sheer willpower could pull him back from the edge. She whispered the prayers she had learned as a child, scriptures she had memorized, and fragments of sermons he had delivered over decades. She repeated his favorite lines, trying to anchor him to life with the sound of her voice. Each murmur was a lifeline, a thread connecting him to the world outside, to millions who had been inspired by his words. Hours passed slowly, each one stretching like a lifetime. The doctors worked with measured urgency, moving with precision while balancing the fragile boundaries of hope and despair. Nurses adjusted machines and monitored his vitals, each beep and flicker a reminder of how precarious his condition truly was. And through it all, Serita's devotion never wavered. She leaned over him, her forehead resting lightly on his chest, willing him to fight, willing him to breathe, willing him to hold on. Outside, the world responded in waves. In Lagos, young believers knelt in circles, hands clasped tightly as they prayed for a miracle. In London, congregations filled sanctuaries, their voices lifting in song and plea. In New York, families held each other and cried, their prayers entwining with millions of others across time zones. What began as a private crisis had become a worldwide testament to human empathy, an extraordinary outpouring of collective hope. Every heartbeat of Bishop Jakes became a shared heartbeat, every flicker of his eyelids a small victory celebrated in living rooms, churches, and on screens everywhere. Serita's sobs were no longer just hers, they had become the sobs of a world holding its breath, waiting for the man who had lifted so many to be lifted himself. Her whispered words, her cries, her desperate pleas were echoed by millions who had never met him but felt the weight of his absence in their hearts. And yet, even amidst despair, there were sparks of hope. A slight improvement in his vitals, a subtle twitch, a steadying beat. Each tiny sign was a reason to keep praying, a reason to hold on. The world waited with her, sharing in every moment of vulnerability, courage, and love. The leaked report had not only revealed a medical crisis, it had revealed decades of silent sacrifice, the quiet heroism of a man who gave his all while hiding his pain, and the depth of human devotion in response to it. Through the long night, the vigil continued. Candles burned steadily, voices rose and fell in prayer, and the image of Serita holding her husband's hand, crying and whispering encouragement, spread across the globe. Her presence became a symbol of hope, endurance, and unwavering love. People felt connected to her struggle, sharing in the heartbreak and the fragile optimism that somehow, against all odds, life could still prevail. In that moment, it was clear. This was no longer just a story about illness. It was a story about human resilience, the fragility of even the strongest souls, and the extraordinary capacity for love to bind people together. Serita's grief, her hope, and her prayers had become a global phenomenon, a living testament to the power of empathy, faith, and devotion. And as the night stretched on, and prayers rose from every corner of the world, a silent truth emerged. Even in the face of suffering, even when life hangs by a thread, collective hope can create a force far greater than any fear. Bishop Jakes' struggle had become the world's struggle, and the world would not turn away. Every whispered prayer, every tear shed, every candle lit became part of a shared heartbeat reaching across continents, an unwavering plea for life, for hope, for miracles. This wasn't just a story about sickness. It was about sacrifice, about the hidden battles even the strongest fight, and about the fragility of life. It was about a woman's scream that echoed across the world and reminded everyone that even legends are human. And when they break, the people who love them break too. Every second mattered. Each heartbeat was a battle, each breath a fragile victory. Around the world, millions watched online, outside the hospital, and in their homes, realizing how delicate life truly is and how heavy the cost of silence can be. Serita's scream was no longer just hers. It had become the cry of humanity itself. Inside the ICU, the chaos outside was nothing compared to the storm raging in one room. Serita Jakes clung to Bishop T.D. Jakes' hand as if her grip alone could pull him back from the edge. The leaked hospital report had ignited panic across the globe, but for Serita, it was more than panic, it was unbearable truth. Fans and believers filled timelines with prayers, tears, and desperate pleas for a miracle. Hashtags spread like wildfire, uniting strangers in hope. Each new beep from the machines was like thunder in that room, warning that time was slipping away. Nurses worked with precision. Doctors moved quickly. Yet every flicker on the monitor felt like another dagger of fear. Serita's sobs rose above the machines, a haunting blend of love and terror. She whispered prayers she had never spoken before, begging for one more smile, one more heartbeat, one more tomorrow. Then came the second revelation from the leaked report, a hidden complication, a heart valve weakening, blood pressure spiking, the rhythm of life threatening to stop without warning. Her nails dug into the mattress as tears streamed down her face. "Not now, not him," she whispered. The words trembled with disbelief. Outside, thousands gathered, candles glowing in the night sky, their chants and cries turning into a global vigil. The world wasn't just watching, they were grieving with her, whispered his favorite prayers, and pleaded through sobs. "Please don't leave. We need you. I need you." Then came another blow. The leaked report revealed a hidden danger, a cardiac clot that could end everything in an instant. The room erupted into a storm of urgency. Nurses and doctors moved like clockwork, every action critical, every command a battle cry against time. And through it all, Serita's scream cut through the sterile air, raw and uncontainable, echoing like an alarm across the world. Millions online felt it. Families prayed in their homes. Strangers cried in churches and streets. In Lagos, teenagers gathered in circles. In London, congregations lifted their voices. In New York, families held hands, weeping together. What began as a report had turned into a global vigil. A fight for one man had become a fight for hope itself. Inside the room, hours dragged like centuries. Every adjustment from the doctors, every flicker of stability, every twitch of movement sent waves of emotion through Serita and into the millions watching. When Bishop Jakes' fingers moved, when his eyelids fluttered, relief erupted not just in the ICU, but across social media. Serita screamed again, this time a cry of hope, clutching his hand as though she could anchor him to life. The world erupted with her. Videos, prayers, hashtags, all carrying the same desperate plea. Save him. Keep fighting. Serita's grief had become everyone's grief, her hope everyone's hope. What the leaked report revealed was more than illness. It revealed sacrifice, hidden pain, and the vulnerability of even the strongest among us. As dawn broke, the machine steadied just enough to spark fragile belief. Serita laid her forehead on his chest and whispered, "We're still here. We're still fighting with you." Outside, candles still burned, voices still prayed, and millions still watched, unable to look away. This was no longer just a medical crisis. It was a global moment of raw humanity, love, fear, and devotion on full display. Serita's screams and prayers had become the heartbeat of millions, a rallying cry for hope in the face of despair. And as the world held its breath, one haunting question lingered. Would Bishop T.D. Jakes rise again, or were we witnessing the most painful chapter of his story? No one knew the answer, but one truth was undeniable. His struggle had united the world. This wasn't just news. This was heartbreak made visible, a reminder that even legends can falter. And when they do, it is up to us, the people whose lives they've touched, to carry them with our prayers, our voices, and our hope. Because every heartbeat matters. Every prayer matters. Every tear matters.